everyone! Are you as sick of the world as I am? Great! I have some tips for you. Now, if you're like me and you're kind of upset with what's going on in the world and you're like, why can't the world be a better place? And you want to go back to a time that you love. Like the 60s. Do you get where I'm going with this? This is a 60s channel. You should... I personally adore the 60s, as you can tell by my fit. What I'm going to be talking about today is how to get back into the 60s, even though time travel's not a thing yet. I say yet. We're going to make it happen. Tip number 1, collect some vintage magazines. You can get these specific ones off Beatles memorabilia. There's like this set that a lot of Beatles fans have. I'll try and remember to link it in the description below. So these are really good. I'm just gonna show you Paul's. So it's basically like a picture set that just has, it's a tiny magazine. Obviously a replica, but they're just a bunch of photos and some stories about like his life experiences. And they have all of the Beatles. So that's really cool. I got these comic books at a thrift shop with my friends. There's cardboard in it to make sure that they don't bend and stuff, but they're really cool. I don't know why I got all of the same ones. There was a ton of them from the same time. It was really cool. I almost got a Life magazine from 1965, but it was $25 and these were 3 apiece, so you see where I went with that. Tip number 2. All right, let me turn, okay. Get vintage records. Yes, sure we're trying to go back, and back then you'd probably have a new record so they wouldn't look as beat up, but it just gives me, a feeling of like the 60s. Got this Paul Revere one. Revere. I've never known how to pronounce that. Paul Revere. Paul Revere and the Raiders. This one I got off eBay for like $2. Kind of scratched, but honestly a steal. Couldn't find it anywhere else. So you got this one that I got at a record store just downtown that sells like authentic records. So this was from 1964. It's the Beatles' second album. I don't know what it is. It's a compilation of stuff. It's really nice. It has a ton of photos of them, and I really like this one. Tip number 3. Take photos with a vintage camera. I have a camera from, it's not the 60s, but it's from the 70s, and you could probably just beg your grandparents and be like, hey, you have a camera you don't use anymore? Because chances are they probably don't. Take that camera, take some good photos. Film develops quite well, actually. Here are 2 photos I took with my film camera. When people say that film cameras are like, oh, the photos aren't gonna turn out as good, think again, look at these, if this will focus. That's the back of my friend's head. I think these came out really nice, and 10 out of 10 recommend. I honestly prefer film cameras now because I've used mine so much. What tip is this? Tip number 4? Tip number 4, right? I have found out that you can just search online radio broadcast from 1960s and find a ton of them. And I think it's nice to go back and listen to radio broadcasts because you'll find new music. Like I found a ton of like songs that I've never heard of. Find new stuff. And also you can just hear what's going on. Like I know what the weather was like on February 23rd, 1969. So that's a cool thing. Along with this, I'm not gonna make this a separate tip, but along with it, you can also look up news broadcasts and watch the news. You probably do that with a lot of things, but like news broadcasts, which is cool. Tip number 5, watching TV shows and movies that were from the 60s is super fun. Really good TV show that a lot of people know about but also don't know about is The Monkees. A lot of people don't really watch it as much as they used to, obviously, but that is a really good show that was 1966 to 1967. They also, hold up, since they were a TV produced band kind of, they also released records, so these are really good, kind of remind me of the Beatles. So if you like the Beatles, you'll probably like the Monkees. I can tell you Ron and Freya both like the Monkees as well, so go watch the Monkees. Good movie from the 60s, Psycho. That's one of my favorite movies, just saying. Tip number 6, dress like the 60s. So I think it's pretty easy to find stuff from the 60s and 60s-ish looking stuff. Basically, like, look at this dress. This dress is, I think, a newer dress, but what you kind of want to look for is, what I look for a lot is wide necks, specifically like square-shaped necks. I don't know why that was the thing I commonly see. Puffy like sleeves and some stuff, like this dress has right here, and kind of boxy wear. You either had those really tight maxi dresses, or you had like boxy dresses like this. This is a really good dress. I pair it usually with go-go boots, which you can find on Amazon really easily. I'm also gonna accompany this with clothes. Makeup. 60s makeup. Why is my eyeliner so much? Let's not care about today's makeup, but 60s makeup, like the whole bridge thing. I'm looking in the thing so I can look where I'm pointing. And like, you know, lower eye mascara and stuff. Go heavy on that. Tip number 7. Eat vintage. I'm not recommending putting a steak in some Jell-O, but if it comes to it, no, don't, please. There are probably lots of things that people started making in the 60s that you can make now. Also, at the same time, I'm not telling you what to do. Eat whatever you want. Tip number 7, are we on 7 or 8? Let's go 7. Tip number 7. If you have friends, get some vintage friends. And if they don't want to be vintage, slap some go-go boots on them and that weird brown line thing that we all do, and be like, record store. It works like a charm, I'll be honest with you. Even just making friends online is a really nice way to welcome yourself into the vintage community. And I think it's 10 out of 10 great. Go do that. Something you can do is keep up with 60s trends. And by that, I mean there's some certain stuff that they do. Like, the first thing that comes to mind was how in school they put a black band around their arm to signify that they didn't support Vietnam. And that's a cool trend that you could do, I guess. But just like look up like what were trends of the 60s. Keep up with that. Tip number 9. Bring back 60s slang. Something that I did was, when I first tried entering the 60s community, I would sit there and I would research what slang was used in the 60s. And a lot of them are like 70s also, so like be lenient with it. Because some of these websites are wrong. But just going and speaking like groovy, you know? Groovy. You know, stuff like that. Tip number 10, style your room. See that bedspread? What is it called? You see my covers? 60s. 10 out of 10 tip I would try again. This isn't a tip, but the last thing I will leave you with is let's remember vintage style, not vintage minds, I believe, is what it is the saying. When I'm telling you to listen to the news and the radio and all that, I'm not telling you to pick up on their racial things that they do from like TV shows and stuff, or in the news where they'll talk about racist things. I'm not telling you, you know, to pick that up, because don't be racist. Don't be homophobic or rude, because basically, here's how I stand. If you want to live like it's the 60s, you gotta live with their mindset. And by that, even though I just said don't do that, by that, I mean, they were all for, most of them at least, were all for changing society to being more accepting of a lot of things. So we need to keep that open mind, but with more stuff. So sure, they were all anti-Vietnam, but today we can be all anti-racism and homophobia. It's the same thing of, if you want to live like it's the 60s, don't be racist, don't be homophobic, don't be rude. Because people from the 60s, in my mindset, if you want to live the 60s like I want to live in the 60s, be kind. And that's tip number 12, be kind. That's how you'll live like it's the 60s. I hope you all enjoyed this video. I will see you next Monday. It was great to see you all, so thank you for watching, and if you stuck it through all this way, I'm proud of you. Thank you. It has been a pleasure to be here. Goodbye, farewell, peace, and love. See you later.